Happy July, Heather. Here we are.
Hello, we are here for our first conversation.
Yeah.
So welcome everyone to Ever So Clever with Amy and Heather, the Experienced Empaths. This is our first conversation and I am Heather. I'm going to really quick, I'm just peeking on our Facebook page to make sure we are on there live. And let us know you're here. Say hello, make comments, and we'll be peeking in on there. We're there. Okay. So I am Heather, the founder of Empath Mama, which is a community for sensitive souls that are moms. I am also a speaker and an author, and I'm writing a parenting memoir currently. I am a married mom of two kids. I have a 20-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son. And what else? Oh, I love coffee and wine, but not at the same time, as I say. And then this is Amy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amy. Heather, it sounds like you're on a dating app. I like this. I'll just tell you right off the bat, I like everything and nothing all at the same time. Kind of the weird component here. My name is Amy Vasterling, and I do have children as well. But I'm an intuitive reader, and that's what brings me here today. Is I've been reading energy since I was very young, and then honed the ability very tightly in my 20s. So I see life from a different perspective, like I would say 2 degrees different than other people, but that's enough to really give a spin on how things work. And I bring that into my home life with my 2 kids as well, and I'm married. And my big deal are cats. The cats are very important in my life. But today, really, our purpose is to bring to you, our mission, I'll say, is guiding empaths through turbulent times so they can really bloom. Heather, I just ripped that out of your arms. And today we really want to find out we're going to talk about traits of empathic people and intuitive people and help you kind of see, can they be one and the same? Are they synonymous in some situations? Because I would say I identify as an intuitive, and I think Heather identifies as an empath in that, its own right. So that's kind of where we'll head today. And I am a public speaker, an intuitive reader, and obviously a chief silly maker. Back to you, Heather.
Yes. So we're going to start off. I was going to list the traits of the empath. So I identify as an empath. My daughter, I believe, who is 20, is an empath. And when I read traits or heard that term empath and had someone define it for me, it struck a chord and it really made sense to me. So I'm going to list 10 traits. And those who are listening, feel free to make comments, say hello, and see if these feel in alignment with you. And some might and some might not. So I just wanted to list them. And they're from Dr. Judith Orloff. She's kind of really known in the world of empath as being an empath, and she's written some books. So the 10 traits that I'm going to list are, the first one, empaths are highly sensitive. That makes sense, right? Second one, empaths absorb other people's emotions. A lot of us feel that. That one really made sense to me, for sure, and my daughter. Many empaths are introverted. Empaths are highly intuitive. So Amy's going to talk about that more in a minute. Empaths need alone time. That I need for sure to recoup from all the energy of other people. Empaths can be overwhelmed in intimate relationships. Empaths are targets for energy vampires. You've probably heard that term if you are an empath or wondering if you are. You've probably heard the term energy empath or energy vampire. Empaths become replenished in nature. So we love to go out into nature, and that's kind of our space to nourish our soul and kind of get back to our self-care in that space. Empaths have highly tuned senses. And then the last one, empaths have huge hearts, but sometimes give too much. So we need to practice boundaries. So those are the 10 traits that Dr. Judith Orloff has. some of those I know I respond well to, or I feel like they are what I experience, with some not quite so much. So wanted to share those with you so that you have an idea. Um, and now, Amy, if you could share more about intuitive.
Yeah, for sure. Listening to that list, and I'm sorry, I ate something that's naughty for me, so I'm having some throat stuff because I shouldn't have been eating that. The ultimate litmus test for me to know that thing isn't good for me. But I think that, Heather, hearing your list, it's interesting to see. I almost would wonder if Judith Orloff has a list for intuitive, because I pulled it from a different source than you did.
Right.
And I'm thinking, how much do these overlap? It seems like quite a bit, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay. Yeah.
So my resource is called A Conscious Rethink. It's the name of the website. And I modified some of these, so they're not exactly what they shared. I just morphed them to kind of more something that I felt was a little broader or different. So the first one that I have is that the intuitive really needs time for peaceful relaxation and quiet time, which could be really related to the empaths needing time away to be unseen, unheard, just be alone. They are highly creative and imaginative. And let me tell you about that. I always thought when I was doing readings that I was making things up because I'm so creative. But then I realized I'm not. And that's something to figure out too, to trust that. People who are intuitive tend to trust themselves quickly. They can feel in and trust or not trust it. They may be able to sense what others are thinking or feeling, which is also, but I feel like there's a little spin on that from being empathic too. So we want to probably talk about that. They're able to relate seemingly random patterns that result in sensible information. So when they explain it, it might not make any sense, but in hindsight, it all makes sense. And they tend to be deep thinkers. So they're people who don't really want to hold a conversation that's surface or small talk. They want to actually cut through and be vulnerable so that there's more meaty exchange and expression going on there. They tend to have a strong sense of purpose and know, like, they're driven to do something, even though they might not be sure what, but they know that there's a strong sense within. They're typically optimistic, but they might carry the burden of negativity on their shoulders. So they might feel like there's too much as a child, the world is too much of a weight on their shoulders, but they didn't know why, because they're just a kid. They're not supposed to be activating anything else than being a kid. They can presence rapidly, making them especially available and able in chaotic situations. They're acutely aware of their feelings. I'm going to say that again, acutely aware of their feelings. And they might feel they believe their feelings versus can separate from what's real and not real, and that their feelings are telling them something, but that they're not necessarily real. They are fascinated by their dreams. They, without thought, closely observe their surroundings. So it's kind of an unawareness of how aware they are. They might think everybody's that aware, but they don't. It's so innate to them, they don't realize others aren't that aware. And it is paramount that they listen to their inner knowing. So somebody who's intuitive, if they get kind of pushed away from what they know is true, they're going to really struggle and wrestle in life. So that's what I have for those items for somebody who's intuitive, Heather.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they do overlap.
Totally. I think there's a lot of overlap. I mean, I think that definitely, maybe we'll start off, Heather, if you were to define for yourself, your experience, what an empath is, what would you say?
I always say it's somebody that can absorb or feel other people's emotions, where you can't distinguish it between, is it mine or somebody else's. That's when I knew what an empath was. But there's so much more to it when I list those 10 traits. But that was the initial description that got me thinking. So when somebody said that to me, because I always felt like I could take on all these emotions, I thought they were mine, but realizing I was probably taking on others, and especially my daughter, taking on emotions of people around her, that made sense to me. So it's that being so sensitive and being so in tune. But when you're that way, you think everyone else is that way too, until you come into the world and, meet other people and realize not everyone is that way.
Right, Heather, I think that's what's tricky about being an empath or an intuitive is you think everybody is that way. So you think they're on that space of understanding or feeling how far away somebody is and so on. One thing I would love if somebody comments if your experience is different, because it would be nice to have a view of how this is broader than what I see. But in my experience, for my life, being empathic was the precursor to being intuitive, I feel. And when I was young, I definitely felt things at a deep level, and I even doing some healing work, doing my stuff, right? Clearing it out. I have seen how I had energy put on me, not as a hex or anything, but more people were trying to dump their shame or dump their fear. And that's a curious thing. And I was willing to take it, probably because I'm empathic. So I've seen that level. But I also want to note that because of the intuitive piece for me has become the predominant piece, I feel like I dismiss the empathic piece of myself. And so here's my example. Took my daughter to have a massage. This was a few months ago. And when I was driving her home, she's sitting in the car next to me. All of a sudden, my neck popped a bit, like it readjusted. You know how that happens. And then my shoulder dropped and I could feel my body relaxing. And I believe I was actually getting the benefit from her massage. And it was very eye-opening. I think I called you right away because I was like, what? If I'm feeling that, what am I feeling from the rest of our world? And as we know, I mean, this is what I do for a living, is I can see the pulse of the energy coming. So this year especially is intense. We're feeling things intensely. But that leaves a, a piece for me. I think I dismiss that empathic piece. And maybe it's that there is so much overlap with the intuitive to the empath that I don't need to address it because I already am addressing it as an intuitive. And that I don't need to do anything else. You know, it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah, and see, we have those type of experience, those empathic, those feelings of somebody else's so often, but I don't have I feel I'm intuitive to some point, but I don't have it to your level. I feel where you can read other people and do that. I have my own gut feeling that I tune into, and that intuitiveness that I use, but I can't take myself out of a situation and view it for somebody else. But my daughter and I are in constant, we've had to learn this. Like, she can feel when I'm stressed. She'll be like, Mom, you need to calm down. I can feel your stress. So we're so close that way that we've had to learn how to work through that. So with you and your daughter and that situation you're talking about, we have that so often that it's created it. She's had panic because I've almost created her to have a panic situation because of my anxiety, that we're so close that way. If
Yeah.
that makes sense, that energy, our energies intertwine so much, but now we know how to speak about it and explain it and tell the other person so we can calm
Yeah,
down.
no, I would agree wholeheartedly. You know, I think for me, I feel when I'm dealing with reading energy, I'm very empowered. I have incredible boundaries and therefore I'm powerful. But when it comes to being an earthly human, I stink at it. And so it's a strange thing to see how my power is so powerful there, and then on earth as a human, it's my boundaries are not as good and so on. But I will say this, Heather, in response to what you said, what I understand is true is everybody on earth, no matter who they are, even if you consider yourself a dense or a non-empathic person, completely unaware, can't feel anything. I have a friend who's a self-proclaimed, he's like, oh, what am I? I feel nothing. And that piece is that everybody has intuition in two ways. It's clairsentience and claircognizance, which is our heart field, and our gut sense, which is the clairsentience. And that's really sensing. You know, we've all had an experience where our gut was like, gosh, I'm not going to go over there, or I'm not going to go to that camp, or whatever or our heart field would respond to things like, I just know I shouldn't be friends with that person or something to that degree. So that's for everybody has that. But for me, I'm multisensory. So I can smell and hear and see and sense and know. I've never tasted, thank God, but all of those senses are available to me to be able to read energy. So I think that's just the difference in being an intuitive is, you might have more, 3 or more of the traits, I guess I would say, because everybody has 2.
Right, right. I think that's good for people to know that we all are intuitive, and you can nurture it and build it too, and learn to practice and use it more.
Right.
Uh,
Right, for sure. I mean, yeah, I tell people, nobody can really teach you how to do it. It's more learning to trust yourself and having somebody help you navigate so that you can understand things, and it will help you trust what's happening. It took me years, and I'm a feisty, like, I don't want to, I have to know everything about this to be able to be willing to do it. And I say to people, I didn't expect it to be me to be able to do that. I was like, what, I can't, why am I doing this? So I think that you're right. It is something that takes a lot of trust and development to some degree, but it's a personal journey.
yeah.
So,
So, oh, I was just going to see if anybody had questions for us.
oh, sure, Heather.
We're getting to that.
Yeah. Well, you're looking at that. I would say too, as an empathic person, I'm not big on protection in general, except for if it's sex. We don't want to have a baby when we don't want one. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
But here we go. But more, I think the bigger thing I'd say is, as an empathic person, the more boundaried we stay, just like I am when I read energy, nothing messes with me because it knows. It's like, it's not going to get past the goalie. And it's not that I'm fierce or feisty. I'm more just very clear and firm and solid in it. So I think as empaths, we also have to leave that as a legacy on the earth that we state our boundaries, and we learn how to receive, but we are aware of that power so that we stop doing behaviors that keep us in that rut of the icky part of being empathic, about going to parties or going to events or being with people who make us feel, yuck. Yeah.
I think that's a great, and that might be a future topic, because I say that too in our, we have a private Facebook group for Empath Mama, and I say, I don't really tell people too much about how to do protection, like bubble and all of that kind of protection. And I did in the beginning with my daughter, we used that, but I think going off of what Amy said, it's really about standing in who you are and that strength of, and that power of being true to yourself. Things don't mess with you, don't come into your energy, because you're showing your strength. And it can take time to build up to that too. I understand that because my daughter was struggling for a long time, and when it was dark and scary. But as she became stronger and knowing who she was and standing kind of in the power of her true self, she didn't have all the darkness and that around her. So I think that is a great, what you were saying is I love that, because we don't need to be afraid either of shining who we are. I feel like a lot of empaths might want to be quiet or not speak up because they're afraid at times. But we're needed right now. We're needed. We've been needed for a long time. So I think we got a lot of topics that we can talk about.
Yeah.
Coming forward, and that's kind of why we decided to have these conversations. Amy and I were in our, I'm not going to say our exact age, but we're in our 40s, so we've experienced things, and we thought if we could share our experiences with anyone, all of you, and both being moms, if we could help you guys in any way. That was the point of our show, our conversation, and we're going to do this weekly. Right?
Absolutely. We are, Heather. Yeah, no, I mean, I totally echo what you're saying. And I think too, one of the things we want to highlight here in these conversations is how, we can say, like, it is timely, it is important, but the empath also gets to lead a life. Like I tell my clients, you get to lead a life off the rails that you didn't even realize, because you're privy to this entirely unique space. And while right now our world doesn't seem to embody or really desire the emotional component of life, that is the life of a human, is the emotional And the mental and the physical too, and the spiritual as well. But the emotional life to me actually represents darkness in my ability to read energy. Every time I go and look at it, that's what that represents. So that's not a bad thing. It's actually an activator, and it's a catalyst, and it offers so much. So the idea is, we also want to look here at how being empathic is freaking awesome. Because we do have privy into an entirely different encyclopedia that some of our society didn't even get to look at ever, right? And so it gives us this unique view of the world, and that's the good part of it. It's just getting that in touch with that and being so that it's really benefiting you. And like we talked about power, that piece is super important and is essential, I think, to really being able to feel good and like, yeah, I got this.
Right.
And it probably, I also want to just throw out there, it probably takes longer or more energy for somebody who is empathic to take care of themselves, or intuitive. And that's a piece of it too. And that seems ugly sometimes, but that is just a necessary piece. So, yeah.
So I want to say we have a few people that have said hello. So hi to Gail in the UK.
Hey.
And Michelle and Annalisa, I believe. So thanks for joining us, you guys. And we're going to be hopping off here. And, you know, share this video with people that you think might find our information informative or helpful. And join us next week. Again, we'll be in this Facebook page, Empath Mama Facebook page, live on July 8th at 12 Central Time again. And we're going to be talking about, what are we talking about, Amy?
Yeah, next week, we're going to really talk about what percentage of people that are empathic or intuitive fall into being an introvert. I think you'll be surprised, and you might want to join us to figure that information out and see kind of where you weigh in. And I have kind of an interesting thing to share about that too. So I mean, it might give you some perspective you didn't have before. And we're also going to do an extended conversation to this. So we'll share more about that next week, about how you can get involved with that if you want to hear the greater conversation beyond what we've shared here. We look forward to seeing you guys. And
yes. Thank you all for joining.
Yes, thank you.
If you're watching the replay, let us know. If you have questions, we'll come back and answer as well.
Yes.
But we hope to see you next week.
Sounds awesome. Thanks, Heather, for joining me too. It was awesome.
Thank you for joining us all on our first conversation.
Yeah, awesome.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Hey, Heather, let's continue that conversation that we're having.
Let's do it.
Where would you like to dive in? I think it's really curious to think about those traits. Heather, I almost think we should talk about that and sync up how many traits that you listed. How many did you have on your list?
I had 10 traits as an empath.
Okay, and I have to count them. So you talk about something like, I think I have 13.
Well, and so being an intuitive, there was overlap. So for my empath one, it says you're highly intuitive. Empaths experience the world through their intuition. Mm-hmm. And then she made a comment, it is important for them to develop their intuition and listen to their gut feelings about people.
So I'm going to stop you there if it's okay. Is that okay?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Heather, what I want to say to people is, when I first started reading energy, I'm fierce. And I said, universe, if you want me to do this, you better provide the foundation, the definition, everything, or I won't do this, because I need to know I'm not a sham. I need to know all these things. And maybe it came through self-doubt, I don't know, but that's who I am. And what came eventually is that if everything is connected, which everybody says that, right? Or not everybody, but a lot of people say everything's connected. The statement came, if everything's connected, therefore there is nothing which cannot be connected. And that's a logical statement. Okay, there might be some people who study logic and are like, well, but that's a logical statement, right? If then this, So the idea there is it's a circle or it's a cycle. And for somebody who is empathic, the way to connect into that intuition is through patterns. And they seem sporadic and erratic. They might not make sense, But if you step back and take a look and sense through, it's really sensing, but it kind of feels like feeling. It's not your mind or your feelings, it's sensing.
Mhm.
You can get the essence of the imprint of what's going on with the two things, and slowly over time learn how to put those things together. And that's what intuition is. It is simply pattern connecting. And the nice news is, if everything is connected, there's nothing you're not going to be able to, you won't be able to connect. The only thing I'll tell you is, I say to people, in 10 years, the reader I'll be, the intuitive reader, because I'm constantly growing and building on that. And now I've been doing it about 2 decades actively with awareness. And that experience has brought me so much more information. So I still have questions I asked
Right,
many years ago, and I still don't have the answer. I still haven't connected the dots, but I never forgot the question. So it must be important, and it will come. Right.
right.
So there's this real spiritual relationship with it too, of when I'm supposed to know that, it will be made available to me, but it's gentle inside. It's not like, oh my God, I got to know that. So that's, to me, what I would say about the intuitive for empathic people. To me, that's why maybe being empathic is the precursor to being and moving into that full intuition.
Ooh, yeah, that
And
makes so much sense.
maybe it does, Heather. I'm not sure it does, but I think too, I'm just going to say one more thing. When
Uh-huh.
women age, we tend to be more comfortable with our intuition and trust it more. And it might be those young empaths that have the weight of the world on their shoulders actually know how to angle it as we get into our late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 110. So,
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say is this past weekend I was writing or editing my book and I was looking at intuition and some of it was saying your past experience and your values will help you make your use your intuition or your gut feelings or your knowing. So I was giving an example of something that was happening with my daughter and I knew intuitively what to say no, but it was more like probably a past experience that happened to me and a bit my value system too was like, nope, that's wrong, that's not right to you. And so I was able to take that, but I think it's me too being sensitive and an empath that all of that together, you know,
right.
and then emotion and remembering and all of that combined made the intuitive hit or the gut feeling come up, and then I could tune into it and know it and verbalize it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what you were saying too about your experience, that made sense to me. And
Right. And
that,
I would say, as a stair step to the next piece, maybe, is, if I'm hearing it correctly, but when we are new at it, we are feeling everything. But it's actually when we learn to get away from our mind and away from our feelings and head into sensing, that's when it becomes really powerful. And I think the feeling helps us move to the sensing. I don't think thinking helps us move to the sensing,
yeah, yeah,
because feelings are already so kind of like creativity. Like they move, they get big, they get small, they change.
mm-hmm.
It's a wild adventure and journey with feelings. And I think that's why that's more related to intuition and sensing. And that's where I might say it's that precursor, so that then once we really know about feelings and emotions,
Yeah,
it's easier to go to the sensing. It's more natural. But I think sometimes people miss the sensing, that it's because the sensing to me feels very separate from me. It's like I'm a viewer. I don't feel like
yeah,
empathic, like, oh, I feel that. I feel
yeah,
that guy is sad.
yeah.
Totally different.
See, that's different because
Yeah.
I can feel it so much that it bothers me for long periods of time.
Right.
Yeah. So, and it might not, and I've said this to you too, that person might not be affected by the situation they were in themselves. But me, it might take me weeks and they might have moved on and it actually happened to them. But I saw it and it affected me in such a way that it takes me a long time to get over it. That's
Yeah.
how empathic or that's how sensitive I am in that emotional place, I guess. But
Right. And
that's
Heather, that's where I say, like, the boundaries, and like I said, I'm not good with this, but the boundaries are,
mhm.
you don't like, we shouldn't take it on for somebody else. But I'll say this is something I've been grappling with over, I don't know, a month maybe, so not that long. But the question of, there's human consciousness, like our awareness of what's coming energetically, we can feel, and we can actually read that with our heart field. And like I said in the earlier part of the episode, everybody has access to that knowing. They can even meter it and say, human consciousness is up. Why is that? But when I think about that versus what you're talking about and describing, I get a little bit like, okay, those are in one arena, but then there's also this piece that's about that, like, say, astrology and that universal energy. And so to me, this is where I'm at with it, but it's like this winter with all of this crazy year of 2020, I started really tuning into human consciousness, which I normally don't. I normally tune into the energy of astrology, and that bothers me. Like, oh God, there's sadness. And then I'll talk to an astrologer friend and they'll be like, oh, that's because this Pluto is in whatever. It feels like Pluto's in Uranus. That was naughty. We can bleep that.
No.
Whatever you need. Oh. But God, oh, how pathetic is that you laugh at your own jokes too long. But to me, that's a question of, how do we differentiate, and why all of a sudden, when I've been tuned into universal energy and how we're being propelled to switch and shift and change and reading that, how and why right now am I feeling human consciousness?
Oh.
And then I can feel like people are mass sad. And I have clients who reach out to me, they'll text me and be like, what is going on? People are driving like crazy. This is happening. They're seeing it in their own angle. And then when I talk to all the clients and I have readings and I talk to my friends, I can put that pattern together and I can say, oh, right now is about, and I don't know what it is about right now, but it might be something like our hearts are yearning for something, or it's about trust, or it's about anger being overridden by love, So, so that gets me confused too. Like, why is this year? I mean, this year definitely is a year about humanity, is it not?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It for sure
Yeah.
has some peace there. So that here, it makes me curious to think about, how do we look at those pieces within it? So Heather, what else was on your list? Did you have where, or maybe where you stopped, I'll say.
Oh yeah, well I just went right to that one. And many empaths are introverted.
Right.
So we're overwhelmed in crowds, it says, tend to be introverted and prefer one-on-one contact and small groups. Even if you are extroverted, you prefer limiting how much time you can be in a crowd or a party.
Right. And the thing I'll say about that too is my daughter, my son and I we were in Sedona, and I had my aura read by some machine, and we were in a small room. The guy was on the other side of the table and I sat, and then he scanned it or whatever. Well, then I brought it into the car and I was reading it, and the kids were like, maybe I want to do that. And we didn't have time right then. So I said, well, maybe tomorrow, let me go and set up appointments. And we did. And when one of my kids is an extrovert, so when he sat down, his energy was fine to be a bit out, like maybe 40 to 80%, somewhere in there. I mean, I don't remember, but he's very comfortable. But when my daughter sat down, who's an extraordinarily introverted person, and she's highly intuitive by nature. I mean, she's quite a blueprint of me, but the guy was so cute. He was some 20-year-old, and he was on a rolling chair, and he rolled back, kicked his leg back, and slammed the door. And he's like, there we go. And I said, what was that? And he said, her aura would only show up about 20%. But when he shut the door, it came out to 50 right away. Because she felt comfortable. So I think that there's that, thinking about empathic people, if you're feeling that energy of others, you might feel like, I'm trying to hold myself together. That we need that space to be completely unseen.
So that's interesting. I went to a local store here to have mine read, and the man in the store is like, your daughter is trying to avoid me. She was wandering around the store. He's like, I think she doesn't want me to read her energy or be in her space or in her energy field. So it was funny because I'm like, hi, I want this reading. I'm all excited. And she's totally like he's like, she's totally doesn't want me in her space.
It makes sense though. She knew.
She knew. She's like, don't even come in here in my little space. I'm
Yeah.
protecting myself. And I don't think she's aware. She was like, she didn't say anything to me like, oh, I didn't want him near me. You know, it's that just she's in tune, intuitive, probably empathic. She's just like, I'm here and I just want to be in my own little space. So stay away. So she was putting out that vibe to him.
Yeah. Now, Heather, that's an interesting thing too, because she did it naturally.
Yeah, she did it
And
naturally.
right. And I think that that's what's really important is we like with intuition and being able to read energy or empathicness, your daughter or intuition, we know when, like, we know how to do it for ourselves.
Mhm.
And so we just need to be allowed and taught and affirmed to rely on that. And that we know, because I think that helps people who are more in this sensitive arena, whether it's empath or intuitive, to thrive, where they
Yeah.
have access to their knowing, and that is not. Yeah.
Well, right, and me not saying you need to you're going to have this done, or you need to, you know, it was letting her be in that space for her and how she, letting her just be really.
Right. Well, and I
So
think, no, for sure. I mean, I think too, I had a thought, now I lost it. Ah!
that happens.
Keep going, Heather.
Parents, well, and I'm just thinking. I mean, she was still probably a teenager, so even with parents, just letting them just know it, they have their own intuition as well, right? So respecting that.
Right. I
I
agree.
would have loved her to have a reading. I would have loved her to have had that machine, and I would have loved to have known myself what it told or showed.
Right.
But to force her would have made her, so uncomfortable, and it wouldn't have turned out well.
Well, I mean, that's another good point with kids who are empathic, or even adults. Like if you have a partner, somebody who's close to you that's empathic, is giving them space so they can process. And often empathic people have to do that by themselves. Like they can't, if there's other information, because remember what we talked about earlier is empathic people and intuitive people are taking in cues without even realizing how much they're taking in. And they're just in a room they walk into, they're taking in probably 80% more than other people, than the dense ones. And
Right.
so they're already processing at a high level. In a new space, she's already processing, but then having that extra piece is over the top for her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot.
A lot. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I don't know. It's an interesting.
Well, and just even that, so on that, the trait, it said empaths have highly tuned senses: noise, smell, excessive talking.
Right.
I mean, I know there's times when I'm in the kitchen and everyone comes in, I feel like I'm just gonna scream. Like I can't, like my nerves feel really like I'm on edge.
Yeah.
And it's nothing that's bad that's happening. It's just too much coming in at one time.
Right. Well, yeah, Heather, I agree. I feel like I was just going to make this note, but I feel like one of the things that creates for me is a sense of, like, if I let it go too far, I might have a sense that I need to control things versus just say, hey, you guys, I need to be in the kitchen alone for 10 minutes while I finish this up, or can you come back later, or can you make your lunch, or whatever. But instead I let it go too far, and then I get into this icky balancing point of like, am I a jerk, and am I like controlling them, or I'm not getting my needs met. Like it's this, I think for empathic people, we can become like, we just suck it up and put up with it, especially as moms or parents, or if we have others that live with us and there are demands there. I think that can be really tricky. So being aware of saying, hey, you guys, could you come back later? Or if my kids came home from school and I felt that way, Heather, I would say to them, let's talk at 5 o'clock. I want to hear all about your day then. So that I
Yeah.
knew I would have space to like finish my work, decompress, and then come and be fresh with them. Because I do think since we process at a high level, it can be really challenging if more information comes in.
Yeah. Well, and what happens, I'm usually don't say anything. And then all of a sudden they'll be like, uh-oh, mom's gonna blow, or uh-oh, watch out, mom's, because they can tell
Right.
I'm getting aggravated.
Right.
So that's a really good point. It just
Yeah.
saying, please give me, because I'm usually cooking and then they're coming to get water, or everyone's reaching across and it's like, and then the noises, the pan, like it's overwhelming to me.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, watch out, mom's getting, and they make
Which
kind of that joke. And it's
feels
like,
bad, right?
really going to
Yeah.
blow, watch out.
Right. You're like, that just lit the fuse and now
But I don't want to. So
right.
So you're right. Speaking for what we need, this is a great reminder.
Yeah, I think too, I mean, I'm sure this will come up. I feel like we're saying everything, but with my kids, I did not know how to have authentic anger. And I would say this even with adults, like I said, people that are close to you, if you live in a home with a lot of people, that using curiosity and humor is a great way to navigate that. I used an accent with my children and I said terrible things to them in that accent that were hysterical. And they taught me to let go of the intensity when I didn't actually know how to set the boundary, because I didn't know what authentic anger was. That might sound silly, but I think a lot of people actually don't know what it is.
Right.
And then eventually I clinched it where I had a moment of authentic anger and I could completely see it. So I do think using tools like that of humor, playfulness, anything that you can to help move yourself through so that it becomes gentle for you. And I mean, I had my kids name me the cultural accent I was using. I had them name me a name from that culture. Like, we made it super playful, and they're like, "Mom, be her." It got crazy, right? So, I think those are nice strategies for people who are sensitive to find your way through, because that is hard stuff. We turn around, we feel guilty, and guilt is useless, or we feel shameful, or we feel, worried, and empaths and worrying, I think, are just incredibly synonymous, and that's not helping.
That's true, right? And then we worry for a long period of time. Like, it's just, I feel at least.
Right, and we ruminate. So I think it comes back. It's like we're chewing our cud and trying to make sure we process everything out of that, when actually it's like useless, stupid grass that's come through our 4 stomachs 10 times. It's like, poop it out. Get it out.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I think that piece is important, Heather, to the inner knowing. We talked about that. I see that on my list, that's actually a core of my work with parents and children, is to talk about the keeping the child, like parenting them so that their inner knowing stays intact. And that's going to help your kids really live their life fully to who they are. And I tell you, once you can do that, your children become the easiest to parent, because they're really navigating life in ways that their peers can't, maybe. So because they really know themselves, so they do think about things. It's like they have a second awareness when they're teenagers. That's what I was aiming for, is when my kids are teenagers and I let them have the car and go out, how do I 100% know for sure I parented them in all the ways to make them a safe driver, quick, under distress, without making them scared or making them, but provided opportunity for them to get there. And so then out of that came this way to parent that's different.
Right. And I did the opposite. So we can talk about that in future conversations, that I didn't give Ellie, or my daughter who's 20, space really to, or I didn't listen to her inner knowing probably like I should have, or mine as well. So there were other things that then came about, behavior issues and stuff. So I think that could be a whole nother conversation that we could help others with, because I feel we had different parenting experiences.
Right. I think that I want to preface this though, because again, as an empathic, sensitive person, I never want somebody to sit in fear or in worry because we're so prone to it. That the other reality to that is some kids are supposed to have a certain journey, and that's how it is. And we can't get in the way of that. So where I figured this out and I can see how it changes the child's experience, and I was able to do it with them. That's what happened in my journey. But my children are by no means perfect or have it all figured out. Like there's other stuff there too. Yet for Heather, for you, and for others that might be listening to this, the child's journey sometimes has situations where it's not necessarily the parent's fault. That's what they were supposed to experience because that's what they signed up for.
True.
So there's this funny,
That's true.
yeah. There's a funny story that this man, he's no longer living, but Colin Tipping is his name. He did a lot of work with radical forgiveness, and he lived in Georgia and also England. He was British. And he said that to understand forgiveness and understand how we come with karma or an experience we have to have, this young boy was born, had manifested a life in Africa where he was born to a community that had nothing, and most of the children were dying. But that's what he was manifesting into, and he knew it, and he was doing it for a certain reason. And then God and others were waiting up in heaven, and they're like, where is that kid? Like, he should have died at 3 months. He's not here. Where is he? And then 17 years later, the kid goes to heaven, and they're like, where were you? And he says, it's those damn missionaries. Now, that's kind of mean. But the idea is, are we getting in the way of God? And even with COVID that's going on, I have seen some ways that these polar opposites are getting in their own way for spiritual means to work out exactly what their standpoint is. If they are against having tighter immigration rules, that could have happened for them with COVID had they actually backed off, but they pushed and pushed. And so their own agenda got overridden. So it makes me laugh that it's like, boy, things were straightening out a bit, but you pushed, you got in the way. Right. And I'm not saying missionaries are bad. I'm not saying that they got in the way. No. But I think that the idea or the concept is, as parents, what if that's their journey and they're supposed to have that, and then we got in the way? But I do always think of this as a parent or anyone, we want to rise to our highest ability so that the others in our lineage can already have that leg up. So that's where I'd put more of your energy is, how do I get there?
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
And that changes everything behind me. But I would not beat yourself up about, am I a good enough parent or I'm not? Because this part you don't know.
Well, right. And I don't really do that. I don't, because where we are, I'm like, this is where we are, and that's what happened. And I don't hold, and I don't hold stress or regret or anything for what happened. What I do hope is that I can share what happened so that others can realize it quicker if their child is similar. So that's the only, I do feel that too, that was probably what we've experienced. It was our journey that was meant to be taken, and it probably would have happened no matter what we would have done. Like, that was just the situation. So, but I'm one of those that it's like, when you learn something, you should share it if you can with others.
Right. And Heather, that's a really good model too, that you didn't take it on, that you're like, this is what it is. And that's a very healthy attitude and space. Yeah. It's important, especially as that empathic person.
Yeah. Do you have any more to add?
I was just peeking at the list, and I see this, fascinated by dreams. I don't particularly relate to that. I'm not fascinated by them, or I don't, I'm always curious when I have a dream at night and then wake up. And I've had some cool dreams. I think a lot of people on earth have had some cool dreams. But do you identify with that at all?
Don't really either.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
I think some people have intuitive experiences through dreams, where they see things preemptively, but I see it like live.
Or they get messages through dreams. I've heard some people say that too.
Yeah. Right. And they see things.
Yeah.
Universally or like that somebody will die or so on. The other one that came up is they can presence rapidly. And I added making them good in chaotic situations. I think that the highly sensitive, kind of intuitive, empathic person can sober up very quickly when there's some intensity that's a small duration of time. And I noticed that. I know, Heather, you and I in other discussions on our own have talked about both of us having that, but we found with COVID it's different, which is interesting.
True. Yeah, because normally if there is chaos or something happens, like in the family or bad, I'm like calm. I'm like, let's go. I know what to do.
Right.
That calm comes in chaotic times. So that must be part of being intuitive, or like you can almost see how it needs to play out. Like, okay, I'm going to do this. Like if something happened, like an accident or something, I can see what I need to do, and I can just do it. Right. And I don't freak out and cry and get all upset. So in those chaotic times, it's like that calm comes over.
Right. Which is kind of ironic, right? I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it doesn't make too much
But
sense.
with COVID, I think it's been such a long period of time too, and it's such an unknown that it's a different beast, kind of like a different experience.
Right. And I think we kind of had opposite experiences where you were like calm and you were easygoing. And from the
In the
13th of
beginning,
March, I elected to quarantine my kids because my husband and I have been traveling, and I was like, this is bad. I can feel something bad is coming. And so I felt that Thursday night before the Friday the 13th, I just felt like at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, I knew inside something was really wrong. And I think that's where I was feeling human consciousness, not necessarily astrology, maybe, or, like how the universe works. But I was just off the rails, anxious, and like, I didn't know why. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm anxious about this thing. It was just like my body felt anxious and I had no clue why. And I just had to kind of endure and be with it and breathe through it. But that was a really odd response. And it took about a week and a half to have that really calm down. And then I hit my stride for a long time. But
right?
yeah, it's
Yeah,
weird.
yeah. See, and I'm calm and like, okay, what do we need to do? This is what we do. My son's home from school. I'm more of
Yeah,
looking at like just different.
it's
But
weird.
that was a whole experience that yeah.
Yeah. Well, right. I mean,
What to even say about that?
everybody's gonna have a
It's so
story
great.
from that. Like,
Right.
what? Yeah, Heather. I think, let's see, I also have the deep thinkers on the list, and we talked about the random patterns. This is the other one, typically optimistic, but might carry a burden or negativity on their shoulders. That ruminating can create scenarios that they don't like, or get to like, oh my gosh, panicked or anxious because they're, you know, spending too much time in that zone of like thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm a very like upbeat, positive person, but there were times like if Mario, my husband's home, doesn't come home till really late, I'll be like, okay, he was in a car accident. He probably, okay, the cops are gonna probably come, like I think these horrible stories.
Oh, honey, you were playing worst case scenario.
I do that quite often.
Yeah.
But yet I'm like, have all this positive, I'm usually really positive, but
Right.
it's like those worst case scenarios come into my head at
Right.
times.
I think that's common for empathic people and
Yeah.
highly sensitive. Not
Yeah.
everybody, but I think that there's a high percentage of us that are like also worried. I mean, I know I've had this thought. I was walking up this beautiful marble staircase in this beautiful building at the University of Minnesota. And um, I remember, this is disgusting. I don't know why I'm sharing it, but vulnerability, right? But I was like ready to walk up, and I'm like, what if I got up to the top and I fell down and I like my head cracked open and I bled all over these stairs? How embarrassing, how disgusting, how would that look terrible? And I thought, why would that be what my mind thinks versus like I was totally taking in like the experience of this beautiful staircase, right? And then my mind goes there, and I thought, shut up.
Right? That is, yeah,
Crazy wild
I get
woman.
it. We have, yeah,
So I do think too, as a result, some people might say that behavior could be like OCD, or it could have some component, but I'll say this. I think that empathic people and intuitive people can actually be nervous or fall into that OCD because they haven't had a way to deal with all of that type of stuff. Like they don't know how. And so they keep it quiet because who's going to tell a story to just anybody like I just shared?
right.
I will, but other people won't. So that kind of experience, it's like if we never got to say it and have somebody say, oh, here's a good way to think about that, and reframe, it becomes hard for us to get out of that loop. So I think sometimes we're not OCD. When people say, oh, it's my OCD, I'm like, yeah, it's not really. It's not the alignment to who you truly are. It's actually something bothering you and making you misaligned. So can you take it
Ah,
for that?
right, right. Yeah. Huh, great.
Well, Heather, are we ready to
Yeah.
wrap it up, or do you have others that came up on your list?
No, I think that's good. Yeah, because I think more will come in our future conversations. So we could
Yeah,
probably
so
wrap up this one.
yeah, if you're catching this one, you've gotten the advantage of seeing the full episode, and that we will have more. We're going to do this weekly, and we'd love to have you join us and just get in the conversation. Definitely, because it's being posted live and hosted live on Empath Mama's web or Facebook page, the business page. You can leave comments there, and like Heather said earlier, we will answer those comments. We also will, as we move into the future, if you want to come and ask a question live, we are happy to answer it on here as well. So join us as we have a lot of themes, and
Yes.
I think it's like exhaustive. I mean, there's just so much to being empathic and intuitive in this time, and I think it's a very important time, like Heather said, for us to be in power with that and understand that, and that's what we hope to cultivate here.
Right. Yes. And we're glad you're all here.
Yeah.
So tune in the next week, conversation 2.
Exactly. We
Or
look
next
forward.
time if you're not, depending
Yeah.
on when you watch it.
We look forward to seeing you and helping you bloom in your own world as an empath or an intuitive, and of course among or alongside this kind of turbulent world.
Yes. All right.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.